We are live on all the social media things. So here we go. Our Thursday Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday had me, did our live stream for Tuesday Night Dreaming on Wednesday.
Right.
So that had me a
Yeah.
bit thrown yesterday. um, so here we go. I'm just taking a second to share the video. And here we go. There we go. Okay, welcome everybody to Thursday's Q&A. It's a time where we set aside about a half an hour to talk about different questions that people ponder about the spiritual life,
Yeah.
The different things that we wrestle with, and questions that people have asked us, whether it's on the live stream or questions that people have emailed us or commented on blog posts or something like that too. And I mean, because when you're talking about the journey of prayer and knowing God and all those kind of things, it's fraught with questions like, why does this happen, and why does this happen to me, and why did it happen to one person and not another person, right? Like, even looking at scripture, why did Job go through what he went through, in the sense of all the having all of his stuff taken from him, right? And why does it look like someone like Abraham just kind of increased and increased and increased? Why does it happen to one person but not the other?
Right.
And so I'm not saying I have an answer to those dilemmas.
It's simple in the sense that we believe God is there. He made us, he loves us, and he takes joy in us.
Yeah.
Right? And it's complicated in that we have all these questions because his love can look really inconsistent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like what
true.
you're saying, why this, why this, and why not that?
Yeah.
And then we bring all our own layers of experience and wounds and all of that.
Right. Well, even simply put, like, the way, say, someone like, even going back to Abraham, someone like Abraham experienced the blessing of God versus someone like John the Baptist and how he experienced the blessing of God, right? Both Abraham, the father of the faith, John the Baptist, the greatest in the kingdom, before Jesus. And, one of them had an incredible amount of wealth and one of them had nothing.
Yeah.
And if you asked either one of them, is God a God who blesses, they would obviously say yes,
right.
But they'd have very different examples as to why or how. So in one sense, all our different questions offer different slivers of.
And I also don't think that they would look to the other one and claim that one had more or less blessing.
Right.
Which I find really interesting.
Right.
And that, I think when we hit those questions, that's where we also need to understand how much we are impacted by the culture that we grow up in and the era in which we live. Right? Like how much we take all of that unconscious bias and unconscious thought, because it's just we were born into it. Right? We don't know any different. And we have projected so many ideas of what goodness and what blessing or cursing, we've taken all those ideals and projected them onto scripture. And so I think that's where part of the work comes, is disentangling what is scripture and what is culture, and that's complicated.
It is complicated,
and it's a process.
It does not like it just happens instantaneously,
and the answers aren't always simple. Right.
Even we have, like, you have revelatory moments where you see things about God and about life and about the kingdom. Even those can be filtered through your own perspectives and paradigms.
Yeah, and they can be hard to stay in. They can be. True. I've had moments that I want to live from, but I don't. Not all the, I try, but I'm not living from that place 100% of the time.
Well, yeah, like I was at, when I just came back
Hi,
from.
Sarah.
Hey, Sarah, it's good to see you. Good to see you on there. I just came back from Calgary and had a bunch of different meetings and things like that. And one of the things I had shared in response to a question is that, like, I set a bunch of notifications on my phone. Right. Every 3 hours, starting at 6 a.m., there's a notification with a short little prayer to remind myself to turn my heart to the Father. Right. So at like 6 a.m. it says, Lord Jesus Christ, be tender with me. At 9 a.m. it says, make my heart like your heart.
Right.
At noon it says, Lord, grant me tears. At 3 it says, into your hands I commit my spirit. At 6 it says, restore me and cleanse me, or wash me, cleanse me, and restore me to you. And so I've got, and then at 9 there's another one. At 9 is, did I bring you joy today? And so those are all like every 3 hours, right? And so I was showing that to the person who was asking questions about how do we enter and engage with experiencing the love of the Father, right? And so then fast forward to another smaller meeting I had, and that person asked another question, like in pertaining to all of that, right?
Right.
And I had to say, look, just because I have all these notifications doesn't mean I always pay attention to them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
it's
times
easy to
where
swipe a
exactly. Well,
notification
there's
away.
times I'll swipe down and I'll realize I've got 10 notifications I've completely
for sure.
ignored. Right. And so my point in saying that is that my intention is to live from the reality that these things are always going to notify me. Oh, that's right. Turn my heart to the Father. Right. But and that does happen. But oftentimes what happens is I don't live from that place and I completely forget.
Right.
Oh, that's right. I went through all my whole day intending to turn my heart to the Father and pray at least momentarily every few hours. And I failed miserably. Right. So, we can have all the best intentions. So,
Sarah wants to know how your trip
was. The trip was really good. It was very fruitful. And I think there was some really good equipping moments, and it was really good. Connecting with everybody and seeing everybody and seeing people that jump onto the live streams here and meeting people face to face, people that I've only seen via video. So you can grab Erin's gonna grab her phone for our Instagram feed. So today's video topic is it was a question that was submitted a while back, but it was basically, how will solitude impact or help me to hear the Father, or even hear the Father differently than I presently do? And which is, that's no small question, right? In the sense of pulling apart the why of solitude, what is even what solitude even is, and how does it pertain? How is it different from driving in your car alone, completely distracted, or setting aside intentional time? And so there's a lot you could cover in the sense of.
So you're saying like solitude is, there's multiple environments.
Yes.
Because your heart, you could be alone on a mountaintop and your heart is filled with chaos.
Yeah, that's something the Desert Fathers say, very specifically.
Impacted.
You could be alone in the city or full of troubles on the mountain.
Like solitude is what you make it. You can be just, your thoughts can follow. Your thoughts do follow you.
Yeah.
What I like about this question though is the heart behind it.
Yeah.
I do really appreciate the fact that someone thought to go, because what I hear them saying is like, I want to hear him better.
Yeah,
and I feel like there are things blocking me from that. So would this help?
Right.
And so I love the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's a great question, but the question's good, but I love the heart behind it.
Yeah.
And
I absolutely, I do, because realistically, what happens with things like solitude or silence or prayer, fasting, worship, simplicity, all the things we'd call spiritual disciplines, is we're told to do them, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens is they become the end in and of themselves.
Well, it's totally implied that if you don't do them, it's like, do them. Not or just else, like, do these, they're good for you. It's like, have you done them though?
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're a bad person. God doesn't love you anymore. Like, they can really fall into that earning the love of God situation.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Like they can or they can become an idol.
Well,
which would be like what we see in the Pharisees biblically.
What happens is an improper view of God, or an uncorrected view of God, or an unloving view of God.
Yeah.
Will influence the way you practice, the reason why you practice the things that you practice, right?
Exactly.
And that permeates all of life as it pertains to our spiritual lives, which our spiritual lives pertain to all of our lives. It's only our modern culture that's really separated those things out. But so instead of practicing solitude, as this person is saying, can I practice solitude to know the Father?
Yeah.
That's a great impetus. I want to know the Father. How can I, right?
Exactly.
As opposed to, do I practice solitude because if I don't, God's going to judge me?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Two very different questions.
Same practice.
Yeah.
Wildly different beginnings and wildly different endings.
Yeah.
Right. And could I perhaps, rather than I want to bring joy to the heart of my Father, and
exactly,
I'm actually afraid of the pain he can inflict upon me, which is generally a reflection on, like a friend of mine said recently, most of those things are rooted in the image of our parents.
Yeah.
And not invariably, but definitely that can play into that.
Well, and I think because most of us we haven't necessarily experienced healthy discipline.
Right.
And I don't even just
in the sense of like being disciplined.
In the sense of being disciplined, but I don't even just mean, so what I mean is like, okay, as children,
right,
healthy discipline. So
yeah,
like,
I mean, you don't mean spiritual disciplines, you mean being disciplined by a parental figure.
Yeah, or any authority figure.
Or any authority.
I mean, even in your job, like, I have had bosses that were horrible.
Right.
They disciplined people.
Right.
Through shame, threatening. I mean, I remember being in a room presented with a stack of resumes, and there was a group of us told, like, you can choose to not listen to us, but if you don't, you're disposable. Like, that's bad discipline.
Yeah, that is really bad discipline.
Right? Like, and that was that boss. And then, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of us, obviously we're parents. We know no parents are perfect.
Right.
We don't always discipline our children the best, most ideal way. And so my point is, we have trouble understanding, holding a God that unconditionally loves us, but also holds us to a standard of righteousness.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And if we're unrighteous, there are outcomes.
Right.
And they might not be the best.
And I think,
because we are just live in this fallen, imperfect world.
Right.
We don't know how to hold. It can be a struggle to hold those two things. This loving God who takes absolute joy in us, in being with us, in creating us and all of that, but also a God who will discipline us.
Right.
Right. And as a believer, there are consequences for sin.
Yes.
Like, he does call us to a standard, but if you haven't been shown that balance, that can be a very difficult thing to kind of negotiate in your mind and understand. Right. And I think the church go ahead, apparently please. I'm just going on. We have really, the church as a whole, we've harped on the righteousness piece.
Right. Which isn't a bad thing.
Which isn't well, I mean, we need that goodness. Like, but we've done it in an imbalanced way, I think, sometimes, though, where we leave out this unconditional, like, God loves you and desires to be with you.
Yeah.
And even if this is imperfect, this is over everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know that that's always been communicated. And I think it hasn't been, because not all of our leaders know it. Like, that's the type of, if you yourself don't have that revelation that God truly loves you, it's going to be, I don't know that you can ever lead people into understanding it.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that's kind of what's happened.
That's, in a way, that's the premise of the transformation book.
Oh, see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I haven't read the transformation book. I haven't read
it.
You've
lived with the transformation book. So
I feel that I know it. I know its essence. But I do.
I see Jason on here. I think Jason just ordered it yesterday, so we'll be shipping her. A copy. So yes. So yeah, that is kind of the essence of the transformation book, is catching the core of God loves me.
Like, I think it needs to come first, because if you don't have that core, you can't understand the righteousness and the need, and like to to attempt to live it,
right.
you'll always see it through, like, you just want to see it through the lens of unconditional love.
Yeah, you have
because
to.
then you are filled with desire to actually live it.
Well, here, this is
right?
what I think people do, is people think of the righteousness of God and the correction of God as correcting my, like they mistake this. God doesn't need to correct sin.
Right.
Okay? He doesn't need to. Why? Because there's already natural consequences for sin.
Right,
Okay?
exactly.
You sleep with someone, you get them pregnant.
Yeah.
Or today, maybe you get some kind of infection or STD or something,
Yeah.
right? That's a natural consequence that teaches you a lesson.
Yeah.
God doesn't even need to punish that.
Yeah.
Because sin already has a natural consequence. Yeah. So you scream at someone, you break the relationship, trust is broken, right? Yeah. There's already a natural consequence to pride, to arrogance, to anger, all those things, right? Yeah. And so what happens then is that we hear God corrects us, right? And we fail to understand that God disciplines, like Hebrews 13 says, those he loves.
Yeah.
And so he goes, okay, you want more of me. I'm going to correct the parts of you that hinder you from receiving more of me, from receiving my love, and then from giving love in the way that you want to the people that you love, right? So his correction and his chastisement to us comes to us in the minute ways for our benefit, because he loves us, right?
Yeah.
And we go, but sin itself, like if I'm angry and I lash out, I pay the consequence of that, right?
Yeah.
I don't need the father to come go, you stupid son, you were angry, right?
Yeah.
I don't need him to do that.
No, your relationships,
My
your job life, your
my
marriage,
kids
everything
will shy away from me, everything, right?
For sure.
And so I already have natural consequences. I don't even need, and sometimes the father does come. I'm not saying he doesn't correct those things.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, he doesn't need to, because we already have a natural consequence. It's built right within creation.
Well, it's like last week I told one of our kids, they were just like kind of being mean, and it wasn't really bad. It wasn't like overly egregious or anything, but I corrected this child gently, but I actually said to them, listen, like, because they said, well, it was fine, everyone's laughing. I said, yeah, I get that, but here's why I want to talk to you about it. Because when you grow up and you are an adult and you have to make adult decisions, this isn't, if you're still doing this, it's not going to go well for you.
Right.
And I want things to go well for you.
Yeah, for sure.
I want you to have good friends. I want you to be able to respect people and appreciate others and be appreciated.
Right.
And so I'm going to curb this little behavior now because I'm a grown up. I can see 20 years down the line. Right. I'm not disciplining because I want him to think I'm a bad person.
Right.
In fact, it was the opposite. It's like, oh, I see the gifts in you, and this doesn't help them.
Right.
This doesn't help your gifts grow to their best ability.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think we have to properly put that in place. So that's funny how the conversation just meanders everywhere. Right. So solitude as a spiritual discipline can greatly aid in hearing the Father's voice.
Yeah.
But as we were saying just beforehand, just chatting about it, it also can become an idol or a hindrance.
Yeah.
And because it's not always the most obtainable thing. And like you had said earlier, like a person can be on a mountaintop and be full of chaos.
Yeah.
Right. And that, so, thinking from my wheelhouse, I love the monastic guys, that they all fled the culture, fled the quote unquote world to go seek God in solitude. And one of the things Anthony the Great, he says, those who live in solitude have escaped three wars. And the three wars, he said, are seeing, hearing, and speaking. But the one that then will never escape is the battle of the heart.
Right.
And so solitude in and of itself is not just spend time in solitude and hear the voice of God. It's not, see, you can be full of solitude in a crowd because you've cultivated a particular lifestyle in your heart.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole point of solitude to someone like Anthony, was spending time in solitude actually introduces me to the nuances of my heart, because I begin to see how much I crave the touch or the comfort of others, wherein I could turn my heart towards the Father and receive solace and comfort from him.
Solitude will reveal your heart to you, I think,
Yes.
like no other discipline.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yes. And of course it pairs hand in hand with silence. Because if you're in solitude, you're probably in silence also. Solitude, in one sense, solitude's more relationally focused, in the sense I've distanced myself from others, right? I can be like, we could be in the same room and be silent, right?
Yeah.
But I can feel your companionship.
Yeah, it's like driving in a car with someone on a road trip and you just don't talk for an hour.
Yes. So solitude reveals certain things and helps us come to grips with certain things that silence doesn't. Silence does come to grip with certain things that solitude doesn't. I remember one time I was, you'll remember this too, when I went to that monastery and left you with the kids for a few days. So
you've done that so many, I don't know.
Not the monastery, but I've left you with the kids traveling for work and such. But this one was just going to the monastery to kind of dial in and see what the Lord was saying going forward a couple years ago. And it was a Catholic monastery. And I remember sitting in the whatever the first service of the day was that I arrived on the day that I arrived there. It was like an afternoon prayer service, because at the monastery they had like 7 or 8 services a day. I can't remember how many it was. I think it was 8, because I think they added in the nighttime blessing prayer, which for the monks, the nighttime blessing prayer was at like 6:30 p.m.
These are my people.
I was just gonna say, you could probably really. I can go to bed now.
Yeah, I'm into that. I am so.
I've told you we should just go join a monastery. And Doug read my book already. Wonderful.
On a sailboat.
Yeah, that's right. This was
okay. This is my new standard. Yes. I'm not reading the book until I'm on a sailboat.
That's fair. Yeah.
I will wait.
Kim and Doug and I were talking. You'll love this, because Doug was going on the sailboat. That's his place to get away, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it'd be so wonderful. You'd have silence and solitude. You just be with the Lord. And Doug was like, yeah, it's my world. I've got everything under control. And it was like, our expectations were wildly different, right? About what we would appreciate about it. I can map out. I can chart out the
you just want to
terrain.
I feel like you could easily end up adrift in the ocean.
Yeah.
Because you'd just be reading, and then you would just look up like, oh, where am I?
Yes, that's right. What was I saying? What were we talking about? So solitude, relationally focused, silence is focused more so on revealing the thoughts of my heart and my mind and that kind of stuff. And so both of them help me to reorient or calm the inner, bring me to a place of inner stillness.
Yeah.
Not so much that I can just, and this is the difference between practicing solitude from like an Eastern mysticism perspective or a Christian perspective, is solitude helps me to come to grips with the struggle so that I can introduce my heart to God, so that he can be the centering point. Yeah. Not so that I can just be somehow emptied of myself or emptied of the need for relationships, right? Not divested of that. Doug would rescue me. That's right.
Oh, good.
But then we'd no longer be in solitude. So I don't know if either one of us would be happy at that point. As long as he leaves me in solitude for a while before he rescues me.
With Kim while the rescue mission is on.
Let's see. Yeah, there you go, Sarah. When she's a widow, she jokes she's going to join the Anglican Church and be a nun, maybe write a book. I have the same kind of aspirations, just not gender confused. I mean,
you've said that. Yeah.
Yes, I have said that.
If you're a widower, that's what you're going to do.
Yes.
You'll be a monk.
Yeah, that's right. I would. I think, anyway, the Lord has to call you to that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But, so solitude is it's not an end in itself.
Right.
In the sense of, well, now I'm in solitude, so thus I'll hear the voice of God. It doesn't do that, but it does introduce you to your own heart, and it does introduce you to your own thoughts, which is helpful for the journey and the path of hearing the Father. And so,
and I do think removing, I think sometimes, it's possible that the question asker by solitude they meant even just turning maybe more silence.
Sure.
Like removing yourself from distractions. And in that case, I think that can help.
Right.
Right. But you'll need
Yeah.
to make it past your own thoughts first. And that is part of the discipline.
Right.
But that in turn, being able to move through your own thoughts sets you up, I think,
Right.
to hear the Lord just as well in the middle of a busy street.
Yeah.
Like that's a discipline in and of itself.
Yeah.
Is if you can do that, then like that will translate to being able to, I mean, I'm thinking even when we do outreaches, we have done outreaches at festivals where it is so loud.
Busy, loud, everything.
You have to sit like this with the person here to even hear you're like yelling almost.
The only way to sleep is to wear
earplugs and stuff. And you have to be able to hear the Lord. You have to be able to tune that out and attune your heart.
Right.
So there's something to be said for like these disciplines, I think, go further than just the one, like just it.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying, it's not just an end. It applies to so many things.
One of the things to note that is helpful to realize about solitude is not spending time with a book. And so if I'm holding this book and I'm not in solitude because I'm with the author. And so because now my thoughts are part of their thoughts and I'm thinking about what they're saying, right? I'm not in solitude anymore because I'm preoccupied with something else.
Right.
So solitude from the classically defined Christian discipline is not sitting there in solitude and preoccupying yourself with other things. It's being in solitude and doing nothing. It's just a being with yourself and occupying the space with God. And so that's an important part, because that's sometimes people miss the benefit of solitude, because there's nothing wrong with sitting down and reading a book. Just recognize that if you're just saying,
don't call it this.
I really think I need to spend time in solitude to hear the Father's voice. Sitting and reading a book is not the same thing as sitting in solitude, because you're filling yourself with the thoughts of the person that you're essentially with the author of the book. So that's the thoughts of the heart never really have time to arise. The craving for comfort never has time to arise, because you're spending time with the author of the book. One of the things that we were talking about before the live, here's a question for you. When was the last time you had solitude?
Well, now, I have not defined it the way you just did. So like, I don't know. Honestly, like you just described it as having, like, you're not doing anything.
Right.
So like never, I don't know. I think the last time, like once I went to this beautiful Scandinavian spa up in Whistler.
I remember that.
That was like so long ago. Finley was a baby. So
he barely made it.
6 years ago.
You went overnight, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then had panic attack the next day.
What was that, when you're driving back?
Yeah.
Right.
Unrelated.
I talked about that this last weekend.
So it was an interesting weekend.
Your panic attack.
But in the Scandinavian spa, there's these, like, the whole idea is you do these circuits. So you go in something super hot, like a sauna or a hot tub or something. Then you go dip for like 10 seconds in Arctic freezing water. And then you go to a dry heat. And then there are these quiet rooms. And it's on a mountain, right? And there's no talking. You're not allowed to talk. Everyone's around you, but no talking, no phones, nothing. And so there are these quiet rooms. You can just go and sit, and it's just a wall of windows overlooking the valley from the mountain. Gorgeous. And that was that is like my happy place. I think about that sometimes. And I remember going and just being like, wow, because I had a toddler and I had just graduated university and now I had a newborn. And I just remember sitting and thinking, I can actually just have a whole thought. I can think it the whole way through.
So that was the last time you had solitude?
I think maybe in that.
I think I need to reevaluate my husbanding.
So what counts to me as solitude now is driving alone. But I'm still driving. So by your definition, I don't know if that's solitude, but it feels like solitude to me, and silence. So I wouldn't. And I do notice that when I have that time and I'm just driving alone, like it is like it opens something. I can hear the Lord. So my clarity to hear him is so much better. But that doesn't happen super often.
Right.
I mean, there's quiet time at night, but as we've referenced, like I can't be staying up to hear
right,
God.
right.
I'm so tired at night.
It's less your solitude and more your kind of decompression.
It's a decompressing time, yeah. But I have learned, because hearing the Lord, not even hearing him, but just connecting with him, and sometimes that would include hearing him, is such a priority. I mean, it's a lifeline. And so I have gotten really good at hearing his voice and being attuned to him in all sorts of like noise and stuff going on. Like I think that's a huge benefit, is that there can be a toddler having a meltdown, there can be a kid watching a TV show, there can be someone else asking for stuff, and I will still sometimes hear a thought about my upcoming meeting that night. Like I have learned somehow, I think practice, my spirit is at least decently attuned to hear God drop something in the most inconvenient and loud, chaotic noise. It's not my favorite way to do it, but I do appreciate that like discipline. Right. And
those, so technically,
or like I pray and listen to God when I'm like, I've talked about this before. We don't have a dishwasher, so I do a lot of dishes. That I've learned, like, that's kind of mindless. And so I can dialogue and hear the Lord and pray doing that.
Desperation, Kim says. The one of the things to say about silence and solitude is that they're different from the term stillness, in the sense of stillness is the result of silence and solitude. It's the immovability of the heart because it's been attached to the Father. So it's the state of having. So what you're describing, and that's why I say this, is what you're describing is the practice and the discipline routinely through your life of offering your heart to the Father in moments where you can, in peace and in silence and in quiet and by yourself, have developed within you a stillness that's a reservoir that's generally there.
Absolutely.
And so when things go chaotic, it's not that my place of stillness is no longer there. It's like, I remember the time when you were about to give birth and I said, just go to your peaceful place. Remember that?
No, I feel like I blocked it.
Oh, yeah. You said, I don't have a peaceful place. I have a primal place.
Yeah, it's my primal place.
Anyway, that's totally a side note. One of the things I forgot I was going to say about visiting the monastery is I went to that first service, the prayer service, and after it ended, I decided to sit just in the sanctuary for a little while, and there were 2 other people in the sanctuary, and I just thought, I'm going to sit in solitude and silence, because they were there, but my focus wasn't on them. And and every time I moved just a little bit, it was like a cacophony of noise in these
like
old
creaking,
wooden pews, and it wasn't happening with them, but it would just echo in the whole place, So I'm sitting here trying to be in silence and solitude, and all I can think about is what they think about me. Like, and I remember thinking, like I study this stuff. I know how to be in solitude, I know how to be in silence. I hope they don't think that I don't want to interrupt them or anything, And so it's to me, it was such a good demonstration about how I'm sitting here intending to be by myself, but because there's another presence in the room, I'm evaluating everything I'm doing based on the other person in the room. And so just the presence of someone there, like robbed me from that place, because it's like every time I just shift a little bit. And
they were probably all avoiding that pew.
Like
they knew.
Well, I mean, the funny thing about that is they probably didn't even notice. They were caught up in their own thing. But
so, Sarah, I want you to answer Sarah's question. Are you saying, so she's saying like she has this free time. So she's saying, but are you saying solitude is required to go away? You have to
go away to be in solitude? No, not necessarily. Like I have a little prayer spot down in our basement, I'm not away in that sense, I mean, the kids are upstairs oftentimes, and I'll go down there while the kids are eating and you're just getting up, and so that's not necessarily going away in terms of a retreat, like in that sense. Although it can be helpful, I think, going away for a day or even a couple of days periodically, maybe once a year or a quarter or every few months or something like that, having some time set aside like that can be really helpful. But it's not necessarily necessary, especially given the station in life the person's at, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not all that, having 3 kids, it's not all that practical for, well, one, for you to get away because I'm often working or having to go somewhere or something, right? So that doesn't mean that you're like somehow not able to practice solitude because of it. It just means that it'll be a little more fleeting.
And I think this is where we have to be somewhat flexible. Like for me, solitude looks like a drive, you know, like, and I'm okay with that. And we need to remember that this is why, like, the Bible talks so much about seasons.
Right.
There are seasons of life. There are seasons for things. And solitude is one of the disciplines. Right? And so although for me right now, solitude is somewhat out of reach, like it's very fleeting when it happens, but there are all these other disciplines that aren't.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Right? Like, and this is where it does become problematic if I start to think solitude is the only way and is absolutely necessary for me to hear the Lord and experience his love. Because if I start to think that, inevitably it's not as much, I don't get it as much as I want. So then if I have that belief, that's where like all the self-condemnation and shame is going to start. That's right. And couldn't be like, God is going to speak to you. He's going to speak to you like in any way. He's not like held back by our environment.
That's
like
right.
We can be, but he isn't. And you know, I'm very aware it's a season. And so I can focus on all these other disciplines, which also like grow my heart and bring me closer to the Lord.
That's right. Absolutely.
Like it's just one of, and that's where, we don't need to put it on some pedestal.
It can definitely help, but it's not the only means to that end. The end is knowing his voice and knowing him intimately, the Father, right? That is the end. The end isn't the discipline. And the path is, the discipline offers us some structure for the path of knowing his heart. Arthur Hernandez asked, he says, there's a healthy practice that John Paul taught called spiritual discipline. I believe that there are at least 8 or 12. One that helps us having a word fast. Do you remember this teaching? Arthur, of course I remember the teaching. It depends. There's no, codified number.
Right.
John Paul would reference oftentimes Richard Foster's book, Celebration of Discipline. And Richard Foster put together 12 disciplines in Celebration of Discipline. And he really worked in tandem with Dallas Willard. And Dallas Willard wrote a book that really accompanies that book well, called The Spirit of the Disciplines. And so a word fast is one of those. It falls under the category of fasting. But a word fast is one of those. We did that a few different times when we were interning with John Paul.
That's right.
And it was, well, when you're spending time with 30 or 40 people, it was wonderful to have a word fast.
I didn't like it. It was hard.
I liked it when certain people word fasted.
Maybe we all liked that other people couldn't talk, but we wanted to talk.
I did do like talking a lot.
You did, that's true.
So Arthur, it's a really healthy thing for sure. Helping to weigh your words and the things that you say. So
absolutely.
But John Paul had some really good stuff on the spiritual disciplines for sure. And in his course, The Art of Hearing God, he talks through some of those things. And some really good stuff there. So, well, we could keep talking, but we also have a puppy and other things to do.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to call this episode to a close. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and great questions, good dialogue. And so we just bless you to really to engage the rhythm of the Father's heart and to find more and more of him in your daily life. And whether that's through disciplines like solitude or disciplines like service, or disciplines like generosity, you can find the Father in all of those things. So we bless you to find him.
Amen.
Okay. Amen. Until next time.
We'll see you next week.
That's right.